Hi everyone, thanks again for joining us for Creator in Conversation. In this particular episode, we're featuring the amazing colorist Tríona Farrell. Now, I want you to take a moment and think of a comic book, think of a superhero. Guaranteed that Triona has coloured that book or character at some stage in her career. Triona is very prolific colorist, but also is recently been getting more involved in her own illustration work as well. And you can hear Triona talk about her career at length and some of her more recent endeavours in towards illustration. Again, this episode was recorded for a live audience at the Edge Dublin, in which the Tala Academy of Sequential Art, Task Art, is located. If you would like to participate in a Q&A or a live talk like what you hear here today, please keep an eye out on our social media at Taskart, TASQART, and you'll be able to join entirely for free with our live audience for our upcoming talks. And now over to Triona.
Awesome. All right. First of all, Triona, thank you so much for joining us today. I think you were one of the very first people, if not the first people, asked to speak at the Academy. We were originally going to do an open day, then we had to reschedule. And now, instead of starting the semester, you've come in to end the semester with us. Well, thanks so much for your patience and fitness into your schedule. Just before recording, one of our students, Alistair, was saying you're so sought after in the industry, so you're very busy, and we do appreciate you taking the time out. I suppose what we like to do in this conversation is mainly just talk a little bit about your professional biography. So just before we began recording, you were saying, coincidentally, about 8 years or so, you walk by like CV at a show.
Yeah, I did.
So do you want to talk a little bit about that story to kick us off?
Okay, I say I almost fell into comics. I actually did a BA in history and classics in college, and then I did a master's in critical art theory, specifically around propaganda. So I came out and I was like, I have no idea what I want to do after college. And it just so happened that I was walking around Dundrum, which I lived in at the time, with just near my parents. And there was a big tent set up, and this was a tent that the Big Bang, which is a local comic shop, was running. It was basically a tiny mini convention, and I don't know how they did it, but they brought over a whole bunch of DC and Marvel editors, including C.P. Cebulski. And I was there with my terrible little sketches, showing Cebulski these things. But it lit a fire in my brain of kind of like, well, this may be something I can do. And I just started doing comics. That's really like what my friend Anthony always says: if you want to do comics, just start doing comics, and if you like it, you do, and if you don't, you don't. But I started doing it, and I realized I really liked it. And someone pointed out to me at that point, hey, your colors are really good. You consider being a colorist. And so I'm very focused, and I was like, okay, we're going to do this. And so I started scattershotting my colors to random people, random editors, kind of like in Boom and things. And I just got my first break with, I believe it was with Dan Waters and the Weaver's book, which was a Boom. This is very long ago, does not look good, but it was my way in. And yeah, that's how I kind of got started. And it was kind of tough going for the first couple years as it does, but kind of like once the ball gets rolling and you get more experience, you just get better, basically, kind of continues from there. So
that's brilliant. And you mentioned Antia West as well, who Dust Bunnies is.
Yeah, no, she's a local indie comic book artist. She's fantastic. She actually lives up the road from me as well. So like,
really?
Yeah, and I was like repeating that mantra because it's very like, if you want to do comics, just do comics. No one needs to give you a free pass or anything like that. You just create your own stuff.
Yeah, that's it. Like sometimes I think, particularly am I saying to the students, no one's going to anoint you. You are now a comic book creator.
Exactly.
You just start making it, and it's nice and all because we do have a community, and now with social media, it's a little bit easier to stay connected, get connected, with everyone. Just because I mentioned social media, have you a preferred platform? Because I know everything now seems to be migrating now since the whole follow X and everything. Is there any particular platform you favour, would direct people to, or do you just keep it below?
I used to be very good about social media and like promoting myself and kind of like Tumblr and things like that. But at this point, kind of like I don't really need to in my career. So like I migrated from like Twitter to, I'm sorry, she's to Climax, to Blue Sky a while ago, like a month ago, I'd say, and just because I could see the writing on the wall, the key to it. So I don't really like I really probably should. I don't really have like a portfolio that I display. Like people know who I am and they kind of come to me in that way. Like I tend to more focus when it comes to social media, and I'm more illustration side of things at the moment. So, and on that, I'm kind of like, I'm basically everything. So you have to be in everything at that point. So,
And with illustrations, then, 'cause you're known like widely in the industry as a colorist, but illustration as well. Did you do art in school as well? You studied history in third level. Did you do after leaving cert? Or?
no.
No, self-taught, is it?
Yeah, no. So like it's funny. I did 6 or 7 years of coloring, and I love coloring so much. But it's not it is a very creative process, but you're not very much in control of the creative process. And I've always been an artist, and I was kind of coming 6 or 7 years in the industry. And not that I was getting burned out, but I was becoming like, I want to tell my own stories. I want to do my own stuff. I want to get back to drawing. And then COVID came, and there was a point in, I think about 3 or 4 months into COVID, where all the companies were basically like pens down. Because they were a bit unsure what was going to happen. So there was about 2 or 3 months where I was like, I had nothing to do, where like I was like, what am I going to do? I decided to start drawing. And I kind of realized, oh my God, I remember why I loved this when I was 16. You're just kind of like, oh, this is great. Why did I stop doing this? It was like really, when I was coloring for 5 or 6 years, I just stopped kind of drawing at all. And so I came back and I just started drawing. And of course I was very bad at it, but I laugh to friends that my coloring ability is far better than my drawing ability. So I'll be coloring my own work and I'll be like, who the hell drew that? What did that? And they'll be like, okay, yeah, this is just my own fault. But yes, I've been kind of doing my own illustration work. I've been kind of doing like just making my own comics. I run a webcomic and a webtoon at this point. So I just do that. I still do the coloring, but kind of like it's more half and half at this point. So I just run it.
What's the webtoon called?
It's called Our First Differences. It's kind of like a romance webtoon. I don't even, it may be outside the realm of this area of like superhero comics, but yeah, it's just something I always really wanted to do. And I do it through, I kind of pay it through Patreon as well. So, yeah, this is currently my business model and I'm loving it. So,
yeah, webtoon's really been jumping up. When they had that IPO of like over $2 billion.
I know.
And they have the $1 million cash prizes now for sponsoring for new strips. It's webtoons is blown up. And have you seen about the Braille comics they're developing?
No, I have not.
Yeah, this is really cool. It's they're working with a tablet partner, and it makes a 3D Braille impression of the comic, so the visually impaired can feel the comic first time the illustration. I was like, that's cool, where technology can make that leap over. So you mentioned there, you touched upon an element of when colouring your own work, what gifted this? Is there particular formats or styles that you prefer? Like, if I'm drawing a page, how would I prepare that page to submit to you for colouring? Would it be like TIFF files or Photoshop files or JPEGs?
So the industry standard is, in American comic books anyway, it's about 600 DPI. You're giving up as a TIFF file, and generally it's going to be about, I believe it's 17 by 27 centimeters. Maybe it's, don't quote me on that, maybe slightly bigger or smaller. I should know it off the top of my head. But yeah, generally what you're aiming for is to have like a clean file that you give up to me, And like there's, now I work with a lot of different artists to do a lot of different things. I worked with Jen Bartel for a while, and Jen, she has everything. She colors or she draws digitally, and she does these huge PSD files with everything on like different layers, And then I have to kind of sift through the layers at that point and kind of pick through them. There'll be other artists, like Devin Shelby, for example. Like he does a lot of ink washes. So he just presents and like he works traditionally. So he just scanned them in himself, and he knows just to hand them to me in like a certain format. Stephen Mooney will hand generally his inks up to me as bitmap format. This is where basically there's no grays in the image at all. It's literally just white and black. Now, there's really no preferred methods. I don't really mind as a colorist as long as the files are clean, they're readable, and they're not huge. And they're also TIFF files, so I can open them in Photoshop, because the industry standard is working in Photoshop, because you do need to make sure that the colors are ready for print in CYMK. So you can't really, I don't know if what you guys work on I know I was at the workshop I was on recently, and everyone was kind of working on iPads. All the kids were anyway. So
We've kept it. We've done actually mixed media this semester. We have Alistair just did a cover of Flash Gordon for us, and we did it in colour and grey tone. But we actually did Flash Gordon traditional, and the background was we mocked up on Canva. It was like breaking through a window effect. But we had the character at 600 DPI. Remove background, add in. But we were next semester. Our curriculum here, we do semester 1, 2 12-week semesters. We do traditional, and then we migrate into digital in the second semester. But we actually touched upon a lot more digital than we thought. We were just discussing that. It's just something you can't divide. But working on the tablet from prior teaching with animation, we sometimes people prefer the Cintiq or the Surface Pro. But the Wacom is like you're drawing like a page, but your instinct is to look down. But you have to look up the screen.
Yeah.
But that you get over that quick enough. It is kind of disjointing at first. You mentioned about file sizes. What way would be the best way to submit files? I'm going to assume, this is probably an assumption, but when you're working for the major companies, like say like Marvel or DC, do they have an internal file sharing?
They do. Now, all the different companies use different ones. Some of them, God help me, boom, they're still using the FTP servers. The FTP, if you guys don't know, it's a really, really old system of peer-to-peer file transfer where you're literally like, one computer communicates with another computer from like America to Ireland. It was something they used way back in the early 2000s and 90s. So Marvel used to use that, but they recently switched over to like a more online. They have their own system of like, they have their own website basically where you log in and download. DC will use something called box.com. I don't know, like it's a popular kind of professional kind of file sharing website. And it just kind of depends. Like generally, I will say most of the time I'm being shared files through Dropbox.
Yeah.
Dropbox is kind of the industry standard. So like I have to pay for Dropbox because I usually have most of the comics I work with Image. They'll just put them through Dropbox. It's the easiest thing to do, really. So I really try to press people for like just get like a proper file sharing thing going, because I don't want to be downloading a ton of files and figuring out, we're running through emails and figuring out where things are, So
like file naming is so important.
Yes.
And like making copies and like having, like the one thing I say to all my students, no matter the subject, no matter the field, have an external drive as well as the cloud, because it's like you know Robert Carey, you would have worked on some stuff, but one of our very first projects, he accidentally deleted the entire project because his knee hit the power button on his PC and reset everything. Like now, he in fairness, now he went back and fixed it all up, but it was now I live in the eternal fear of, is this on a cloud? Do we have this on our site? Do we have it backed up?
Yeah.
It's on just get yourself an external drive as well. What device do you work off yourself?
So I have like a big PC at home. I just completely avoided sort of the Mac stuff, and I have a gigantic Cintiq that is I could kill a man with, I'm sure. Huge. It's like a big 22. Now I probably have to replace it soon because like it's getting old. But yeah, I do also have an iPad that I will sketch on, and I've drawn comics on it before, but kind of like it's a bit rough going, to be fair. So yeah.
It's so this next question stems from the last DCC we did in August, where we had an Irish creator panel, and I was like, myself, a fellow colorist Ellie Wright, I think it was Colin Griffin, Danny, Danielle's, a crowd of us. We were talking about what's the work-life balance like of being a professional comic book creator, and it was pure Irish because the misery just came out. It was unintentional. He's like, it's so lonely, and we work on and I can't wait to get that recording out there. It's just like we went full Irish with it. But with yourself, what's the experience being? Because would you class as, is it freelancer, or are you like a self-employed entity? Like, what's the balance for you? Do you have like colleagues you meet up regularly with, or is it just you kind of in a room and?
Well, personally, I'm a huge fan of the misery first. But no, not really. I have, I think, probably a good work-life balance at this point, where like there was points definitely when I was building my career where it was not good at all. Like if you've ever tried to work 72 hours straight, not in that buff illustrator by the end. But like I love working, so it's almost addicting in a way. There was Kieran, the guy who's Divine and I'm blanking his name a little bit.
Gillen.
Kieran Gillen, yeah, said to me once that kind of like it's almost addicting in a way being a comic book creator, because the more you work, the more money you can make, and then the more you output, the more eyes you get on it. So it is a little bit addicting, I think, with comic book creation, especially since like when you go in, you're earning so little. But like I say at this point, my work-life balance is pretty good. Like I used to not take weekends off. I take weekends off now, and I'm generally working about 8 hours a day. Sometimes it can get a little bit messy. Like I was up to 3 a.m. last night because I just really wanted to get that Harley Quinn book. But that was really, I tend to procrastinate at the beginning of the week and then like, on the Friday. But I think it's something that you can't really tell young creators, because they're probably going to go out and make the mistake anyway of working too hard, because you really want to prove yourself. And also you love to work on what you're doing, so like you're like, oh my God, I get to do this for a living. Like, you want to do it all the time. And then you come out the other end and you're like, why do I feel so anxious and tired and sick all the time? And like, oh, dummy, you worked like 15 hours yesterday. Like, of course, your body, you're not meant to work that or concentrate for that long, So
it is tough for this generation in particular, because you have that stress of if you're not walking, you can't relax. You feel you have to be walking. And then when you're walking, it's like, am I doing enough? Because now this generation, the previous ones, I did have the 9-to-5 job, getting the mortgage in your 20s, like that. But I suppose that's greater factors than the comic book industry. You've left that point, I'm afraid. In terms of a lot of your process, so you're primarily digital. Do you have, or have you worked much with traditional? Like, would you keep a stock of traditional inks and pencils or pens, or is it just all
kind of purely digital at this point? Where like I will, when I'm like sketching out ideas for things that I'm working on illustration wise, I will tend to do things traditionally, because it's just a little bit easier when you're kind of like in your own zone and you're not distracted by the internet or anything like that. But like if I'm kind of finishing like a full illustration, it will be digitally always. So because not to say that I don't have like pencils and things, like I have a huge amount of art stock at home, just even from when I was a kid. Like these ancient color methods. I used to, back in the day, I didn't have like a drawing tablet. I think I got my first drawing tablet when I was like, I want to say 18. So back then I did everything through coloring pencils. So I just did these insanely huge pieces purely with these prism colors that I had. Like looking back, I probably should have realized I'd be a colorist, but yeah.
That's brilliant. And I have just one last question, and then I'll throw it to you guys if you have questions. But mine was just a recurring one with a lot of the creators, and of course it's around AI, because this is perhaps the most, not disruptive, but biggest change within the industry, I suppose. A lot of commentary has come in from it. We have, I think Brian Michael Bendis mentioned he recalls when Photoshop first came in, and the shift came from it as well. But of course, we mentioned about social media earlier on in the conversation, and a lot of people are moving platforms because of the AI policies as well. From your role, like, how do you have any thoughts or feelings in regards to it? Like, do you think there would be tools that you think, okay, this might be able to avail? Or is it just absolutely something that should be avoided? Because there is the concern as well, will the AI generate content be used to make certain art forms very elitist? To access this, something that's made by an actual person will have a higher price and then becomes out of the reach, and the cutting off of skills and access. Others say, oh, but it's just another tool. It's a chance to us to explore new horizons. It's still early days, I suppose. But any comments?
So I do have like some, I guess, very nuanced thoughts about this. Like there's like two statements: people who are kind of like no AI at all, and people who are kind of all of the AI. And I would be kind of more kind of leaning towards no AI, but also with some exceptions as well. Where like I think the reality is that there are certain jobs that are just going to be taken by AI art wise. If you look, just to go down to my artwork, this kind of thing I don't think is really in the reach of AI at the moment. I think because it's so, I guess my style and look is very unique and very pencily. That's very hard for AI to replicate. I think if you are an artist who's doing digital pinups of anime girls in a painterly style, I'd be a little bit concerned about your job. But I think the reality is it's coming, and you have to. I don't want to say to people adapt or die, because I think there's also an element of like these companies, or sorry, these AI bots, not AI bots, but they're scalping basically people's artwork. And I think that's like a serious issue that should be dealt with. But there's also kind of like, I look towards the future, and with my coloring, I say to people that I probably have about like, I want to say 5 to 10 years left before, and not to say that companies will immediately jump to color like using just AI purely, but I think it may be a case in the future where like AI would be used to kind of color comic books in certain ways, you know, or like colorists would use AI to get like a jump start on it.
The flats or something.
I think with the flats probably will be replaced, and then it may reach a point where like the AI becomes sophisticated enough to replace sort of like the shading and things like that, and then maybe a colorist will come in at the end and kind of fix things up. You know, you see this in a lot of industries, like translation, for example, where AI will come in, they'll translate someone, or they'll translate like a book, and then, you know, a professional translator will come in and they clean it up afterwards, you know, which means you just have to, you can cut like 2/3 of your translation stuff, which sucks. But I think I would tell artists to like to be very wary of it, especially in the form it is right now, where it scalps basically people's artwork. It steals them.
Yeah, it's just recorded.
But also I can see a future where like it would be really cool, I say to people, like if I could commission my own AI bot that would scalp my artwork.
Yeah.
And it could, you know, create, say, like a kitchen in Tríona Farrell style. I think that would be very cool, you know, going forward. Like I would totally pay for something like that, you know, where like if I could just give it like this huge depository of like my own work, and then it could create some stuff that kind of like with comics, especially kind of learning how to do a webcomic and things. Your things are, you know, you have to keep at such a pace. It's really, really difficult for like one person to do all that. So like any kind of tips, tricks you would do. But like obviously I think when you're approaching AI, there needs to be like a fine balance between like, you know, will this aid in cutting down time for people versus is it stealing people's jobs and also stealing people's like literal like art and livelihoods as well. So
yeah, it's such an ethical question as well around it. And it's just that sometimes though, unfortunately, the ethics and the morals of it doesn't quite the legality of it. That's the
I know.
Yeah, no, it's going to be curious when I've been starting these recordings since I think August 24. Probably won't be releasing everything till about 25, but even listening back when it is released to see what changes to be made. I'm just waiting for my Star Trek holodeck. You know, if you get that, I'm like, okay, maybe that might be interesting.
Yeah, for maybe a couple of 100 years of that.
So that's awesome. And now I just want to throw out here now some of the students and members here, if there's any questions anyone wants to come in with now at this stage.
Yeah, like a question that popped into my head quite a while ago, just because I was looking at somebody going through Photoshop and digital art, and it came to a point where they had to engage color layer of everything with the chroma colors and things like that. And they said, now I won't go too deep into it, but it's raw physics, and that's it. They sort of left it at that. Had you, because you were doing backlit digital comics sometimes, but then maybe doing stuff for print at other times, have you ever had to get into a conversation about color with the person publishing it or something, where you have to suddenly learn how the paper's going to reflect and everything and match that with?
Okay, so this is like a question of like whether the colors are dark enough, essentially, is what
Things like that, like you use chroma as one example.
Yeah, we're kind of like, or like how the red is going to display. So this, I think, used to be a huge problem, I want to say like 10 or 15 years ago. I was trained partially by Geordie Belair. She was a great believer in having no K, which is no black within the colours. So you would, generally, if you were colouring, you would use CYMK, which is literally cyan, yellow, magenta. And so all the colours would literally just have no black in them. But I think there is another colorist as well called Tamara Bonbon, a fantastic colorist. She would say that kind of like the having K and the colors doesn't really matter. And I would kind of agree with her in a way, because I think that kind of printers have come on so far in the last couple years that I don't think it matters too much. I think probably about 20 years ago, I think it was a huge problem if you had, you know, the printers were very sensitive to like whatever was going on. But like nowadays, not a huge deal. I have printed some stuff that I thought was quite dark, but will still print, no problems. But this is something whenever I'm teaching people, the way I will do is just that I will tell them start with no K, because I think when students come in, they have like no idea. You really have to learn that there are certain colors that like that is just not going to print. And there's nothing that's going to tell you that's not going to print. It's just going to be experience, that's going to say that's not going to print. So there'll be certain colors that you'll color in RGB, for example, because that's the standard on computer screens. And there are certain colors like really bright pinks. Like that particular shade of blue would probably print very grey if I was to actually like print it out because it doesn't have a backlight. And converting from RGB to CYMK also messes up the colors a little bit. But like I think that it's really a kind of a process of learning what colors aren't going to print, and also kind of starting from the start as well. So this is why I tell my students start with like coloring, learn how to color a comic without using any black, because you can use purples, you can use dark blues and things to like make something look dark. Because what will happen with like a lot of young colorists is that they will go like, well, they're in a night scene. Clearly things need to be dark. You add in like a ton of black, and then they go like, what happened when it gets printed? Where everything is just like, it's almost like matte black, because, there reaches a certain point with the K where if you have too much black in the color, it's going to look fine with like a backlight, but it's going to look terrible once printed, because it's just, it'll match the line art essentially. And, no, what's the point of coloring then? You're just like printing on a black page essentially. So like it's something that's kind of, I think, very difficult to explain because you have to almost like experience it yourself. And I wish Photoshop would kind of give you more warnings for this kind of thing. But as well, that kind of like when you're working with different companies, they all have their different kind of standards for color. Like DC, for example, like their printers, now this is what I've been told by professional colorists. I don't know if it's true at this point. Their printers can apparently take like a lot more black. So they can take up to about 40K in black, while Marvel can only take up to 20, and so can Boom and things, is what I've been told, so this is why you see, and I think that's probably down to kind of like, the way DC have like a lot of darker kind of background, for example. Yeah, definitely. So it's really kind of like a matter of experience. But I would always tell young students that kind of the best thing to do is to start coloring in CYMK with no K. Use the sliders, and if I could show you, I would. But like I kind of do it old style, where I don't color pick or anything like that. I literally have like a slider that tells me kind of like, this is 200 magenta, this is 30 yellow, this is 40 cyan or whatever, and I literally mix the colors from there, so that I can go in, I can be very, very precise about what colors I need. I don't want to tell people that you need to be super precise, but you don't need to be super precise. I think it's always really important to get it precise and then start breaking the rules rather than going the other way around. Like when I was out in Denmark there, and they were all coloring their iPads, and they're like, is this color okay? And I was like, no, that color is not okay. This is not going to work. And we're like, but I really like this color. And I'm like, you may like it, but it's just, what's the point? It's going to print black.
Yeah.
It looks good in an iPad. It's not going to look good on a printed copy.
It's this is something that we always do as well with the printed proofs, is first of all, what paper are you printing on? Because the GSM, and if it's glass or not, will affect it.
Yeah.
I then, of course, like you mentioned light source as well. So many kids now, so I shouldn't say kids, just people in demo creators. That's a default. but they go with digital. But then when they go to print, like the light source changes. So it's like, and of course, there's the whole Batman Damned incident as well with the lighting and the coloring when it came into the light source. Because I did a class myself with Dan the DO during lockdown when everyone was just doing stuff, and I remember he was commenting on that, and he just said, well, the one thing I learned was light source and when you look at your printed proof. But yeah, so that's really interesting onto it as well. And for paper stock, do the different companies, like as a colorist, is that something they communicate to you, like it's going to be printed?
I think things have become so loosey-goosey at this point in comics that, like I said, I think it's partially just to do with like the changeover, and also the fact that printers are so advanced at this point that each company has the term they use is a bullpen. And this is basically the file processing place where like all the the artists will hand in files, they'll be processed, they'll be handed to me, and then I give them back to them, and then they'll be processed and they'll be put up in like a PDF and sent off to Canada or South Korea or wherever they print them these days. And Different companies do use different stock. There was one I was working with called TKO, and I wish they had told me they didn't use like just, the standard kind of glossy DC comic book look. They had kind of like this kind of thicker, almost textured kind of paper. Oh, and I wish I'd known that ahead of time, because I could have made it look a little interesting. But like it's like I think there's kind of like an assumption that you are doing it to a standard, and you just have to kind of get it out to that standard. But there will be other places that they'll communicate to you that kind of like, this is what we're doing, And like I think there's a little bit of an assumption sometimes in your comic book career that you do some research into it too. But like if you're going to work on a DC comic, you should probably buy a DC comic and just have like a look at like what kind of like how heavy pages are and like how much ink they're using and things like that, So
did you ever hear about Ditko and Spider-Man?
no, what's this?
So years ago, Jonathan Ross did a documentary and in search of Steve Ditko, and Ditko was saying they got the colours wrong because they printed on newspaper at the time. He didn't want to be red and blue, he wanted purple and orange. And I thought that's very garish, but when you look at Amazing Fantasy 15, the cover, see how darker the red and blue is, you go, oh, I get it now, because it would have, he was accounting for the reproduction and how the hue would have changed. And that always just stuck with me. It was like, wow, like, red and blue, primary colours probably, but just looking now, thinking that could be an orange and purple and what that would have meant, what that could have been. But no, that's great. And so, Alistair, do you have another follow-up into it yet?
No, that was a perfect answer, because like it covered, as you were saying, that like, oh, if you're going to cover it all in black, it's just not all opaque.
Yeah.
Because it's your job would obviously to account for that. So yeah, like I've been reading comics, for example, recently that are only covered the core colours, and Cyan and McDead.
Yeah.
And like the old Wolverine one from the 80s. That's one thing.
Yeah, well, back in the day, they only had, I think 70 colours to work with. Like, it'd been explained by, like, older colorists that there used to be a thing called professional separator.
They're getting by ketchup and mustard. It's,
yeah.
like and both. And now they're sort of making that the average experience for myself. Kind of like,
yeah.
That's kind of...
Well, I think, like, flat colours, when you do them, like here on these are very flat colours here.
Sure.
But like, I think that can work better. Like, you can sort of go in, people think that you do like the over-rendered stuff.
Yeah.
Fine.
I guess it was from exposure. I think people forgive you for huge things of color.
Oh, yeah.
And that's something I wouldn't have known without checking.
Oh, no, definitely, yeah. But I think that kind of like, especially when you're doing a comic and there's like a character moment, I get very annoyed when I'm like reading a comic and kind of like they have these super detailed backgrounds. I think there's no point in like detailing this city scene behind them. It's like it's detracting from like the actual like character moment that these two characters are having. It's going to be covered with dialogue boxes anyway. So like, not to say you should never draw backgrounds, but kind of like a good artist. This guy's brilliant. This is Hayden Sherman. Not Hayden Sherman. I'm missing. Like he's fantastic. Like just even having like. There's no point in like covering lots of detail. Like it's about drawing the eye to like the right places. This is the main thing about comics, is like learning how your reader is reading the comic and allowing them to draw the eye, or allowing the eye to be drawn. Like I don't know if you've ever heard of like the Z format, and this is where comics are read in like a Z, like this, and that, and you can see that the artist is kind of thinking about it in the moment. And, I'm kind of adding to that as well by just having like big plates of colour. Like there's no point in like over detailing that big shot of white, because the eye is going to jump to it immediately. And there's no point in like over detailing everything in the background. I can just blank it out with colour. Like a panel like this will probably take me about 3 minutes to colour, because it's just, once you start to learn the tricks of the trade, then having 8 years of experience definitely does help. Don't get me wrong. You just can come in and you can understand like kind of like what this page needs and like what the reader needs to understand what's going on, the story. So yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
And so, do you have a question?
I do actually. When you're colouring for your own personal projects, how do you decide what colours you use? Do you like choose like if it's a character, like what would best represent them, or how do you go about picking your own colours?
For my own, like this would be kind of like my own illustration work. Like it kind of just depends on kind of like what I'm doing. Trying to go back down to like my own illustration work there. Ignore Superman. Let's take a mummy. Yeah, like I don't. I will kind of just choose what looks best, really. But then, like, there's, you can get into kind of color theory and kind of like, what would kind of work best in like a scene like this, where you're kind of like, well, it's like a soft kind of grassy scene with like a character. You want to kind of like, I want like these soft kind of pastel colors, with some kind of like strong kind of standout colors like the white and the brown, just to kind of draw the eye. If you're kind of talking about kind of making your own characters and things, having like palettes that are kind of complementary or consistent, always good, the coming in and just like kind of having to think about like what the story wants you to tell color wise. So like obviously if you're talking about like a kind of a subtle scene between two characters at night, you maybe want to go for like more blues, can we color them in like blues? If you're going for like a wild action scene, I think it's always good to have like very standout colors on the characters' costumes, so that when they're flying and there's kicks going everywhere, they're like really noticeable within the scene. So it really just kind of depends, it comes with experience over time as well. But I think a good start is having like a palette and having that palette be complementary. So no bright purples and oranges.
That's outside the Phantom's purple. They ran out of colour at the printer.
You can well believe it, yes.
Yeah, he originally wanted to be called the Grey Ghost. And they said the Phantom, and then they went, they're going to have them grey. And they just went, some guy in a Lee Focus one day we seen them colour, what, purple?
Yeah, that's fine. It worked out in the end.
It's perfect. It's perfect. That's brilliant. And you mentioned, Abigail, you're using pencils at the moment and stuff, and you're doing a piece for the junior set.
Might be back on at the moment. I actually brought all my Gold Ultra stuff into the teacher, and she was quite impressed, so I might have won her.
Oh, very good. Very good. And then are you going to colour that by hand then as well?
I'm hoping to do both traditionally and digital.
Very good.
I'm hoping to get alcohol markers for Christmas that I'll use to colour the piece, and then I'm going to do a digital version with the same traditional sketch on my iPad as well. We sent them both to the examiner to try scrape some marks out of it.
Brilliant.
Like I did a gigantic coloured pencil piece for my leaving cert, so there you go. It can work. I think as long as it looks, the end result looks good. Do they do digital art now in like leaving certs of interest?
No, I've been strongly advised against doing it. Really? Okay, style I'm doing, and the fact that I'm also going to attempt it digitally. She's been like, look, you're probably not going to get low marks for this. She tried to warn me against it, but I was like, yeah, no, I'm going to ignore you.
I think, yeah, or like they have their standards in the leaving cert as far as I recall. Like I ended up doing like a poster, I think, for my leaving cert and like the junior cert as well. And like it kind of sucks, but kind of once you get to sort of like a higher level, I think that kind of like I can kind of understand from the education point of view that not everyone has access to like an iPad or like a Cintiq or whatever. So
yeah, it's about standardising, and it's about the individual. Like we have the same debates in when I was program director of animation, we had the same discussions over the tools. And then recently, like 2D animation used to be in Adobe Anime, formerly Flash. Now it's Toon Boom Harmony. You don't have Toon Boom Harmony. Like the director's like, what are you doing? So it's always an update and progression with technology. But yeah, I'm glad to hear we're converting some people and the QQI framework anyway. That's brilliant. And any other questions on the floor at the moment? Or you were speaking earlier on about a tri-colour.
Oh yeah, well it was kind of what you saw down the street there with the Mr. Freeze bit. Webcomic coming up, or comic strips coming up on assignment in January. I was thinking the entire storytelling could be achieved probably with...
Yeah, if you can do it in 3 colours, then do it. Like I think it's more impactful just to have like a really, really limited colours.
It's a background, midground, foreground.
Yeah, because like I think that kind of like you can get into, you can do kind of crazy, something like this, for example, is very, very limited colour, where there's like basically kind of like 4 or 5 colours going in there,
It's only because it was kind of a unique case. I came to want to do that from having worn a pair of sunglasses. They blocked out the green light colour spectrum, so traffic lights would disappear if you put them on. That's how I discovered something was up with them.
No.
That doesn't sound safe.
I know, right? I'm a cyclist.
Oh, God.
Well, I think it's very necessary. Yeah.
It was for one day only. I was a menace, but it turned the world to try out. Like it was eliminating something light color related.
Yeah.
And it ended up being the case that everything was very identifiably. You could do background from.
Yeah.
and it was, oh, where it looks like that if you're not over busy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was handy enough kind of demonstration for me, but obviously I had to
Yeah. No, I know. Yeah. Yeah.
see trap.
Yeah. But no, I know what you mean. Yeah, we're like having like one color be for like the foreground, one color for the background, or one color for like the middle ground. I think
It's work, but I've gone back and read comics, I guess, trying to place myself in how would this be colored with the limitations that.
Yeah.
And it changed my literacy a bit on it because I'm noticing that all the comics I read throughout all the years of reading comics is way simpler looking than I remember.
Yeah. Well, I think that kind of like if you can like why bother rendering for hours Batman's face when you can just get the same result just with like a couple kind of strokes of color, you know? Like it's I always think it looks I think it's a better it's better for students to come in with like limited color palettes because they begin to learn about like matching the color with the narrative, which is so important when coloring comics, where like you're looking to capture story beats with color, you know? And that's very difficult when you have like 15 billion colors to work with and you want to over render everything. When you have very, very simple colors, you can do color beats far better. You know, like the big wham panels of going like, you know, suddenly red, suddenly blue, going back to blue with, you know, the fear.
That's the one I was mentioning earlier, the death, that one.
Yeah, just like the extreme shock of whites in the background, you know, where like it's about really kind of balance. And also, you know, when I'm kind of, you know, one of my favorite things to do is to have like a very blue palette and then a very reddish palette. And then as like the tension increases, like increasing the color, like increasing the red as it goes on and like matches the beat of the story, you know? And
that motif like was sustained in video games for a few years.
Yeah.
2011 to 2013, orange. But like it works. Like,
you know, it does. Yeah. Where it's very, people kind of go like, this is a morose scene. This is kind of a very, you know, this bright orange or reddish scene. It's very, you know, intense. And like, it's just, what you're aiming for in comics is to avoid someone kind of like taking more than 3 seconds in a panel to realize what's going on. And that's very handy with color, especially when you're like following a color beat.
That is a question I had because there's two examples of it. Happened when The Matrix came out. Happened when Black Hawk Down came out around the same time. That they would put these sort of sepia filter.
Like the greenish kind of, yeah.
Years. Like, it lasted a while. Have you been asked to, ever in a colouring job, to ascribe to one of those trends, to have it look like things that are coming out at the minute?
No. I think that kind of like, there would be times people would come in and kind of like, you will get artists and writers who'll be very direct about like what they want, you know, and it will never be ascribing to certain trends. It would just be kind of like what they what they want kind of professionally for their comics. So I work with Alison Sampson. She's on like a whole bunch of Marvel and DC comics at the moment. And I did Sleeping Beauties, which was a Stephen King adaptation. And Alison Sampson is very direct in like what she wants. So she would go panel by panel and be like, this is what I want for this panel. This is what I want for this panel. You know, she's a very clear idea of like what colors she wants. And there'd be people like Stephen Mooney, who's kind of just do whatever you think looks good. Even just kind of like, you're the expert here. So it will really like depend. And there will be companies who come in, and generally with the companies, they wouldn't give me much direction. They would just kind of tell me, you know, this is kind of what we want. You know, just do what you think looks best. You know,
that's what I'm imagining is, let's say, the company in comic for Lego.
Yes. Oh, there comes something like, I work with Lego. God help me.
Yes. Lego plant wizards.
Oh no, and I worked for a while, I think a couple pages on a German Lego comic. Christ. They wanted like hex codes for the characters. They wanted to be that precise.
Well.
So this was like Lego Batman, and they were kind of like, okay, so it's like 6-1F5-2 for Batman's yellow.
Oh my God.
Like, okay. And they would come back to me and they're kind of like, it's slightly off in this point, you know, but that's because Batman's in shadow. And I'm like, yeah, but it's slightly off. And I'm kind of like, okay, no, I just gave up. I was like,
oh no. That sounds like a night.
I think I worked like 2 or 3 pages, and they had me on 2 or 3 pages, and then they came back to me for more work, and I was like, I understand there's a need, but I think that kind of you're putting unnecessary work for a comic that a kid is going to read and not care if the hex code is off by like 1 point.
Alice actually has a background in stage acting and such. I'm saying that many makeup artists, you're well known among makeup artists.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so makeup artists that I've met, now when I say makeup artists, they're not professional makeup artists. They're people who like makeup a lot, but the way they buy their makeup now is that the colour swatches are clearly screen matched to the colour palette of, say, a film. And people like these.
Oh, okay.
So one of them was, this one was a film related, but they had done before. They made a makeup palette that was all the stuff they don't like. So it was every colour that they would associate the stuff they think, like food they think is not.
Oh, okay.
And it came to be a complete thing though. It was very, like, it was cohesive, but it was only because they were saying that those people were colourists. So they were they said that they had the same job title at least, but it would have probably been for interior or fashion design. They still had that title, and they were there making makeup swatches.
Whatever really kind of, if you're working with color, you're a colorist, and that could be anything from like working on like animation to what I do to even like makeup artists, because there's an art to it.
Like where I investigated it, it was the case that at least some of the ones that were doing screen matched makeup kits, so the makeup kit for Beetlejuice, that kind of way.
How cool.
They did use AI to key the colours. So they would take whatever key frames they wanted from the film, and AI would glean all these colours and then put them in art or something. Like, I was sort of...
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think...
It seemed to be
I would have just picked the colours myself.
Yeah,
but sure, whatever they easy thing.
Some of them do it that way, some of them do it like you just mentioned.
Yeah.
But it's a thing that exists, and it seems to be born from, if you can nail the primary colours or something, you can productize it as a makeup kit. Like it's just something I've seen done then.
I do agree with, I see like a lot of colours I think represent certain palettes anyway, like represent certain things. So like if, like red and black, for example, I would immediately think Dennis the Menace. I'm sure there is some kind of Dennis the Menace makeup kit out there.
Yeah, like I promise you this person had about 5 makeup kits that were put together this way.
Yeah, no. Yeah, no, I can well imagine it, yeah. Where like there's certain colour combinations where you look at it and you just immediately think like, like this is, this is like a certain product. Like a while ago, I don't know where I saw this online, where like it was a series of like swatches of like a combination of colors, and you would look at it and you would just immediately know what they were referring to. Where like this is, it's just like it's a whole bunch of bars, and you look at them and go like, that's Snow White, for example, because it would be very kind of this very specific kind of like black, red, and then the yellowish dress, and like Disney's Snow White. I think our brain just kind of connects those colors together.
Paul Dini had a great comment where he said, red, white, and black, kind of like Dennis the Menace, but it's like Harley Quinn, Deadpool,
Yeah,
it's like Mickey Mouse. It's kind of like a recurring palette sometimes, but like something about it fits in, like the color with the design could be it's so ingrained in the design, to complement.
Yeah.
Super. We're actually coming up close now to the hour, like for our time. Any final comments or questions?
Well, good.
Alice is about to like, oh no, I have so much I need to get out. Hopefully you come back again.
Give me one more. Sure, shoot.
Yeah, all right then. So like I guess with the digital painting, because you can grade the colour to go from lighter to darker, darker to lighter, but still probably using the same colour code for it. Have you found that you've gone to being able to use less colours but just gradate them more?
Yeah, this is kind of something I just gradient all my colours at this point. So I realised a while back there was no point in like over rendering something, where like, just to give an example, we're not this one. So it's like this is all kind of colour gradients. You can see here we use like the best thing to do with skin is to just get your big brush in Photoshop and just like make it kind of light at the top and dark at the bottom.
Because it was only because Abigail said alcohol markers. I've been dipping white holes into them for a couple of months now, just to see, can I arrive at that sort of grid?
Yeah.
Now they're on paper, excuse the pun, they do clash.
Yeah.
There is a way to get them away.
I'm sure there is. I wouldn't know myself.
It took some while to wait.
Yeah.
It's good to at least see it up on the board.
Yeah.
See it smaller. That the solution to fill the page seems to be the gradation part of that.
Yeah, we're like generally, Becky Cloonan gave me a good tip once, even with like her line art, what she will often do when she's doing an illustration is that the black, she'll have like a very dark blue at the top and like pure black at the bottom, you know, because her eyes tend to start at the top and then reach the bottom. So if you, now this is not proper rule of thumb, but generally if you look at illustrations and kind of comic book works, it'll usually be quite dark at the bottom versus quite light at the top.
Frank Frazetta illustrations, he just colours all their legs in black.
Yeah. Well, why, like, frankly, he's right. We're like, why bother rendering the legs?
It was all okay with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
Brilliant. And what projects do you have coming up soon, Triona, that we'll be able to see more of your work?
Well, I have the Batman Dark Detective with Dan Waters and I believe it's Hayden Sherman. I'm trying to remember who the other artist is there, but it's kind of flying in my head. But there's also I'm on the Harley Quinn books as well. I'm on the Free Agents with Kurt Busiek and Stephen Linney. I'm also on there's a new company called Distillery.
Oh, Distillery.
Yeah, Distillery. I'm on something with them with a couple of great artists that's going to be announced soon. So yeah, there's a couple of things coming up. Like I'm honestly just doing like a little bit less work coloring wise, you know, still chugging away in the background. So
That's brilliant. Well, thanks so much. Really appreciate you taking time. And thanks to everyone as well. No, it's Storm Dara and everything, you know, it's like
particular mad for praising it.
yeah, without blue and just before we end, better than the blue Peter badge. Very task that badges.
Thank you.
So thanks again everyone, and we'll get this out and hopefully come back again soon. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
My thanks again to Triona for joining us for this particular episode. Again, Triona has such a prolific career in terms of colouring. It was a great opportunity. It was actually one of the talks students at the Academy were very excited to sit in on as well. So hopefully we'll have Triona back again in the near future for another episode. And thank you all for listening. Again, please consider liking and subscribing to the podcast. It really helps the podcast to grow. And for more information on what we're doing with both Creator in Conversation and the wider Task Art, please follow us at Taskart, TASQART, or taskart.com. Until next time, this has been a production copyright 2025 Macaulay Consultancy.